The first intrusion into human thought came like a whisper at the edge of consciousness, subtle yet unmistakable. Citizens across Earth suddenly felt shadows brushing against their minds, memories tingling as if under inspection. Panic rippled through governments and military installations alike, but humanity responded not with despair, but with ingenuity. Scientists and strategists quickly recognized the enemy was telepathic. The Nerethi, a species whose mental reach could probe and manipulate entire populations. Unlike previous adversaries, this enemy did not strike with weapons or fire. It struck with the mind itself. In orbit around Mars, the first offensive forces assembled soldiers and engineers trained in improvisation and mental resilience. They wore neural disruptors, devices that emitted irregular patterns designed to mask thoughts and emotions. Their movements were erratic, deliberate in their unpredictability, forcing the Nerethi probes to falter. Early skirmishes revealed a startling truth. The Nerethi were not omnipotent. The human mind, chaotic and creative, could resist even the most precise telepathic intrusion. Commanders devised tactics that relied on the very unpredictability that made humans uniquely dangerous. Pilots executed maneuvers that made no logical sense on radar. Engineers sabotaged and repaired systems in rapid, seemingly nonsensical cycles, and civilians participated in mental decoy networks to confuse alien probes. Even simple acts, children improvising in schools, musicians playing discordant notes, citizens thinking in abstract and illogical patterns, became weapons of survival. Humanity had turned its greatest flaw into its most powerful strength. The Nerethi, confident in their superiority, were baffled. Their probes, used to reading and manipulating linear thought, encountered constant disruption. Plans that relied on anticipating human reaction failed repeatedly. Each encounter bred frustration and, eventually, a new sense of caution. Humans had discovered a way to fight without weapons, relying solely on the chaotic, creative, and resilient nature of their minds. Above the lunar surface, a critical battle unfolded. The Nerethi sent a task force to disable Earth's orbital defenses, expecting little resistance. But humans implemented a mental chaos protocol. Soldiers and civilians alike engaged in coordinated unpredictability, their thoughts deliberately scattered, emotions fluctuating rapidly, patterns constantly shifting. The alien telepaths, unable to process the irregular input, experienced interference that cascaded across their fleet. Systems failed, ships collided, and confusion spread like wildfire. The orbital station remained intact, humanity's first victory against a seemingly invincible enemy. As the war escalated, humans refined their methods. Elite units trained in improvisation and mental fortitude became the spearhead of psychic defense. Artists and performers were drafted to teach unpredictability and creativity, blending emotional depth with tactical necessity. Civilians learned techniques to shield their thoughts, and schools incorporated exercises in lateral thinking, abstract problem solving, and emotional agility. The human mind became a weapon, each neuron and synapse a tool in a battle fought not with guns, but with ingenuity. The turning point came during the Nerethi assault on Earth itself. Millions of minds felt the invasive presence of the telepath simultaneously, a wave of psychic pressure that threatened to paralyze governments and militaries. Yet humanity responded as one. Neurodisruption grids pulsed across the globe, synchronized improvisation protocols activated, and collective mental decoys flooded the alien perception. Humans acted unpredictably, yet strategically, movements, decisions, and emotions intentionally varied to confound the enemy. The Nerethi, overwhelmed, misinterpreted signals and inadvertently sabotaged their own operations. Elite strike teams penetrated the enemy's command structure using mental misdirection, turning the Nerethi's own telepathy against them. Energy pulses designed to disrupt humans were reflected, creating chaos within their ranks. The telepaths, unaccustomed to resistance of this caliber, felt an unfamiliar sensation: fear. Humanity's unpredictability had neutralized what had once seemed an absolute advantage. Victory was not won through brute force, but through creativity, adaptability, and the relentless ingenuity of the human mind. In the aftermath, humanity emerged stronger and wiser. The battle had revealed that the mind was not merely a vessel for thought, but a weapon capable of shaping outcomes on an interstellar scale. Soldiers, civilians, and leaders alike understood that their strength lay not in technology alone, but in the chaotic, creative essence that defined humanity. The Nerethi, once confident and dominant, retreated to reassess, humbled by a species they had underestimated. Earth began to change. Schools and institutions incorporated training in improvisation and creative thinking, blending art, science, and strategy. Humans learned to think in patterns that could resist manipulation, to anticipate intrusion, and to harness the chaotic potential within themselves. They had survived the first psychic invasion, not through superior power, but through the very qualities that made them unpredictable, resilient, and endlessly inventive. Humanity had faced a species whose greatest weapon was the mind itself, and had discovered that the human mind, with its flaws, eccentricities, and boundless creativity, was equally formidable. In the silent aftermath, floating among the stars, humans recognized profound truth. The Nerethi had underestimated them, and in doing so, had awakened a power that could never be predicted, never fully controlled, and never entirely defeated. The battle of minds had been won, not by domination, but by ingenuity, spirit, and the extraordinary capacity of humans to adapt, improvise, and inspire. The victory above Earth was only the beginning. The Nerethi, though retreating, were already adapting to the chaos humans created. Their telepaths attempted to synchronize in greater numbers, probing collective thought patterns, seeking weaknesses in the improvisational defenses. But humanity had learned to evolve faster. Scientists developed neural echo chambers, portable devices that projected multiple, conflicting thought patterns, making it impossible for the aliens to determine which signals were genuine. Soldiers wore these devices into space, their minds appearing as moving mazes to the Nerethi, constantly shifting and overlapping. Humanity's first offensive came not with fleets or weapons, but with strategic unpredictability. Teams of elite operatives infiltrated Nerethi-controlled space, creating disruptions that were as much psychological as physical. They triggered false alerts, scrambled telepathic links, and manipulated the aliens into reacting to phantom threats. Entire star systems were evacuated by Nerethi fleets chasing illusions, while humans mapped safe corridors and studied the alien responses. The Nerethi had underestimated human creativity, not only in improvisation, but in planning, deception, and lateral thinking. On one remote outpost, Commander Lena Ishikawa led a strike team into a heavily monitored telepathic node. The Nerethi had constructed psychic amplifiers to extend their influence across light years, but humans turned the system against them by projecting overlapping mental narratives. Feeding them to the node, the operatives caused the alien network to interpret its own signals as multiple conflicting threats. Telepathic probes shut down, energy fields collapsed, and the node self-destructed. Lena's team escaped unscathed, proving that the human mind could dismantle alien infrastructure without firing a single weapon. Meanwhile, Earth itself had transformed. Schools, workplaces, and even leisure activities now emphasize mental agility and unpredictability. Citizens practiced exercises in improvisation, abstract reasoning, and controlled emotional volatility. Musicians and artists collaborated with military strategists to design simulations that taught people to think in patterns too complex to anticipate. Humans had weaponized their creativity, turning the chaotic nature of thought into a strategic advantage. The Nerethi response was escalating. They deployed mental shock fleets, attempting to paralyze entire regions simultaneously. But humans countered with collective improvisation exercises across cities and space stations, blending neural echo chambers with spontaneous coordination. Entire populations became part of the psychic battlefield, using unpredictability and ingenuity as their shield. The aliens, for the first time in their history, experienced failure on a scale that was unprecedented for them. A critical turning point came during the Siege of Titan. The Nerethi fleet arrived expecting Earth's defenses to collapse under telepathic assault. Instead, humans had created a layered defense. Physical starship formations interspersed with teams projecting false mental patterns, civilian neural networks transmitting improvisational noise, and elite strike units ready to exploit any miscalculation. The Nerethi probes were overwhelmed, unable to separate reality from deception. Starships collided, energy shields failed, and the fleet fell into disarray. Humanity seized the initiative, capturing key vessels and gaining intelligence on alien operations. It became clear that humans had discovered a fundamental truth about the Nearthai. Their telepathy, while powerful, relied on assumptions about predictability and linear thinking. Humans were inherently nonlinear, irrational in productive ways, and capable of improvisation that no algorithm or probe could anticipate. Each victory reinforced the HFY principle. Ingenuity, adaptability, and creativity could triumph over raw psychic power. As the conflict spread to distant systems, humans refined their techniques further. Specialized teams called cognitive strike units operated like improvisational artists in battle. They would infiltrate alien-held systems, creating cascading failures through unpredictability, manipulating the Nearthai into overextending, misreading threats, and turning their telepathy against themselves. Even in the vacuum of deep space, humans demonstrated that the mind could be a weapon more precise, versatile, and deadly than any starship or missile. Despite their losses, the Nearthai remained formidable, forcing humanity to continually innovate. Battles became as much about psychological strategy as logistics or technology. Humans learned to simulate alien thought, predict likely responses, and then act in ways that were impossible to anticipate. The combination of physical resilience, mental agility, and cultural ingenuity created a feedback loop. The more the Nearthai tried to adapt, the more humans evolved new strategies. The final stage of the campaign approached when humanity executed a coordinated strike across multiple Nearthai command nodes. Elite operatives infiltrated telepathic hubs, projecting layers of deception, while fleets engaged in unpredictable maneuvers to divide attention. Civilian populations supported remotely through synchronized improvisational mental networks, adding complexity and noise that rendered alien probes ineffective. The Nearthai, faced with a reality they could no longer read or control, suffered systemic collapse in several key sectors. Victory, when it came, was not sudden but inevitable. The Nearthai withdrew, recognizing that their telepathic advantage had been neutralized by human ingenuity, chaos, and adaptability. Humanity had demonstrated a truth that would echo across the stars. No matter the enemy's power, the unpredictable, creative, and resilient human mind could overcome even the most formidable psychic force. In the aftermath, humans did not gloat, they learned. Cognitive strategies developed during the war were integrated into education, governance, and technology. Society had been transformed by the demands of survival and victory. Humans had fought a species that could read minds and had emerged victorious through mental dexterity, ingenuity, and improvisation. It was a reminder that their greatest weapon had never been firepower or technology. It had always been the human mind itself. The galaxy took notice. Stories of the battle spread to other civilizations, portraying humanity not as conquerors but as innovators and survivors. Aliens marveled at human capacity for creativity, adaptability, and courage under psychic siege. Humanity had redefined what it meant to be formidable, not through sheer strength, but through intellect, spirit, and the relentless ingenuity that turned chaos into a weapon. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the space station orbiting a distant star, soldiers, scientists, and civilians alike reflected on the truth that had been proven. When faced with mind-reading, telepathic enemy, humanity had fought not just to survive, but to demonstrate that the human mind, with all its unpredictability, creativity, and depth, was a force no alien could fully anticipate or control. The battle of minds had ended, but the legacy of ingenuity, resilience, and the HFY spirit would endure forever. The Nearthai retreat was not a surrender. It was a strategic recalibration. They had underestimated humans' ability to weaponize unpredictability, and now every decision they made was haunted by the potential for deception. Humans, however, pressed forward, turning the retreat into an opportunity. Elite reconnaissance teams infiltrated Nearthai territory, mapping psychic nodes and studying their telepathic architecture. Every encounter revealed more about how their minds worked and how to exploit the cracks in their otherwise formidable psychic network. Dr. Moreno, now leading the Cognitive Strategy Division, proposed a bold plan. Instead of waiting for another direct assault, humanity would launch a mental offensive, targeting the Nearthai's command consciousness directly. Utilizing synchronized neural echo chambers, improvisational algorithms, and civilian-generated mental noise, they would project layers of conflicting thought patterns into the Nearthai collective, creating chaos from within. The plan was audacious and unprecedented, but it relied on humanity's greatest asset: creativity and unpredictability. Strike teams trained for months, learning to manipulate their own neural signatures while projecting false intentions. Artists, musicians, and improvisational experts collaborated with soldiers, creating simulations that mimicked alien psychic structures, but introduced randomness at every possible level. For the first time, humans were not just defending, they were shaping the battlefield inside the minds of an enemy civilization. When the offensive began, entire Narration command nodes went dark. Telepaths struggled to interpret the flood of conflicting signals, their carefully coordinated networks collapsing under the weight of human ingenuity. Soldiers inside these nodes felt alien projections twist and collide, creating confusion so profound that even the Narration leadership could not stabilize the system. Ships malfunctioned, fleets collided, and entire psychic grids self-terminated. Humans had turned the Narration weapon, the mind, against its own creators. The turning point of this mental war occurred when Commander Lena Ishikawa led a mission to infiltrate the central psychic nexus of the Narration fleet. Using a combination of physical stealth, neural echo chambers, and improvisational mental techniques, her team projected cascading layers of deception directly into the alien core. The Narration, unable to process the conflicting inputs, experienced collective paralysis. Their telepaths began to doubt each other, misinterpreting intentions, and issuing contradictory commands. For the first time in their history, the Narration faced true uncertainty, a human-created reality in which their predictive powers were useless. As chaos spread through the Narration fleet, humans seized the opportunity to disable key ships and capture vital intelligence. Every engagement reinforced the same principle. Unpredictability, creativity, and ingenuity were not just offensive tools. They were decisive weapons. Humanity had proven that even a species whose strength lay in total mind control could be defeated by minds that refused to be predictable. In the aftermath, humans did not simply celebrate victory. They reflected on its meaning. Civilizations across the galaxy began to take notice, sending envoys and scholars to study the methods humanity had used. The battle was no longer just a human story. It was a testament to the power of creativity, adaptability, and resilience. Through improvisation and mental dexterity, humans had transformed chaos into strategy, proving that even the most sophisticated alien technology and psychic ability could be countered by the ingenuity of a species that embraced its own unpredictability. The Narration withdrew, their fleets scattered, their minds forever altered by exposure to human ingenuity. They had underestimated humanity, assuming that predictability and control were universal principles. But humans had demonstrated that creativity, emotional depth, and improvisation were forces that no telepathic probe could fully comprehend or dominate. Earth's defenders had shown that the mind itself could be a battlefield, and in that battlefield, humans had no equal. As the galaxy adjusted to the new reality, humans began rebuilding and expanding. Techniques developed during the psychic wars were incorporated into education, strategy, and culture. Schools taught improvisation and lateral thinking alongside mathematics and science. Civilians learned to resist manipulation and to exploit creativity as a tool of survival. Soldiers trained not just their bodies and weapons, but their minds, refining the art of unpredictability. Humanity had transformed itself, emerging from the conflict stronger, wiser, and more capable of facing any challenge. The Battle of Minds became legendary, a story told across generations. It was a testament not to firepower, nor to technological superiority, but to the extraordinary capabilities of a human spirit. Where the Narration saw weakness, humans found strength. Where the telepaths assumed predictability, humans created innovation. And where fear had once threatened to paralyze them, ingenuity and resilience turned the tide, reshaping the galaxy's understanding of intelligence, strategy, and power. And so, humanity had not merely survived the psychic onslaught. They had triumphed, demonstrating that even against a species capable of reading thoughts, the creative, unpredictable, and resilient human mind could prevail. The lessons of the war would endure, that imagination, adaptability, and ingenuity were forces as potent as any weapon, and that when humans stood together, no intelligence, alien or otherwise, could fully anticipate, control, or defeat them. The galaxy had learned a new truth. To face humanity was to face minds that could never be contained, never be fully understood, and never be entirely predicted. And that truth would shape the future of every civilization that looked upon Earth and saw a species whose greatest weapon was the boundless power of its own imagination. The war did not end with the Nearthai retreat. Even in withdrawal, their presence lingered across the galaxy like a shadow, and humanity knew that vigilance was essential. Earth became a hub of interstellar intelligence and mental defense, with stations orbiting key star systems to monitor psychic activity and prepare for any return. But the conflict had also sparked a new kind of exploration, one that combined science, creativity, and the mind itself. Humans began developing mental projection technologies, allowing small teams to venture into uncharted regions of space with their consciousness amplified and networked, scouting without leaving their ships physically exposed. Elite units continued training, blending artistic improvisation with tactical precision. Pilots, engineers, and civilians practiced improvisational exercises daily, creating mental landscapes designed to challenge and refine adaptability. This new doctrine emphasized that victory did not rely on sheer firepower, but on the ability to think unpredictably, to improvise under pressure, and to turn imagination into strategy. Even leisure activities, from music to virtual art, were harnessed as tools to expand cognitive flexibility and collective problem-solving. Meanwhile, intelligence gathered from Nearthai territory revealed the psychological impact humanity had inflicted. Entire sectors of the alien empire had experienced what their leaders described as mind shock, a condition that disrupted telepathic coordination, sowed doubt among their ranks, and forced them to rethink strategies. Humans had not just defeated the Nearthai militarily, they had redefined the limits of telepathic engagement, proving that no species, no matter how advanced, could fully anticipate or dominate a mind capable of creativity and chaos. In one isolated system, a team led by Commander Lina Ishikawa undertook a covert mission to establish a forward post near a Nearthai psychic node. Using layered mental deception, neural echo chambers, and improvised psychic techniques, the team created an artificial maze of conflicting signals. Alien telepaths entering the region found themselves trapped in loops of their own projections, unable to communicate or control the node. Humans had transformed what was once a vulnerability into a strategic advantage, demonstrating that adaptability and unpredictability could serve as both offense and defense. Back on Earth, society had embraced the lessons of the war. Education focused on lateral thinking, improvisation, and emotional intelligence alongside conventional science and mathematics. Military and civilian populations trained together in exercises that blended creativity, strategy, and resilience. Artists, musicians, and philosophers became integral to national defense planning, contributing perspectives that no conventional strategist could replicate. Humanity had learned that the mind itself was not just a battlefield. It was a force capable of shaping the outcome of interstellar conflict. As humanity extended its influence, other civilizations began to take notice. Envoys from distant star systems sought guidance, curious about how a seemingly fragile species could outwit a telepathic empire. Humans shared insights into mental resilience, improvisational tactics, and the power of collective creativity, reshaping the galaxy's understanding of intelligence, strategy, and cooperation. Where once humans had been underestimated, they were now recognized as masters of adaptability, innovation, and the unpredictable power of the mind. The Nearthai, humbled and cautious, began tentative negotiations. They had witnessed the extraordinary capacities of humans, the ability to improvise, to defy prediction, and to wield creativity as a weapon. These first tentative contacts set the stage for a new era, one in which humans were no longer merely defenders of their homeworld, but active participants in a galactic community that recognized ingenuity and unpredictability as fundamental forces. Even years later, stories of the Battle of Minds persisted in human culture. Schools taught the history not as a tale of fear, but as a testament to the power of creativity, adaptability, and resilience. Children practiced mental exercises designed to foster improvisation. Citizens engaged in collective strategy simulations, and the military maintained units capable of deploying unpredictability as a tactical weapon. Humanity had turned its perceived weaknesses, the chaotic and unpredictable nature of the mind, into its most formidable strength. The galaxy had learned a profound lesson. telepathy, technology, and intellect, no matter how advanced, were not absolute. The human mind, with its capacity for creativity, improvisation, and emotional complexity, could overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. In the endless expanse of stars, civilizations would remember Earth not for weapons or numbers, but for its ingenuity, adaptability, and the unparalleled power of human imagination. And somewhere in the silent void beyond the known systems, humans continue to train, explore, and innovate, knowing that the next challenge, whether telepathic, technological, or entirely unknown, would be met with the same indomitable spirit. The battle of minds had ended, but the legacy of ingenuity, unpredictability, and the HFY spirit endured, a constant reminder that humanity's greatest strength had never been its ships or weapons, but the boundless, unpredictable brilliance of its own mind.